it's just an argument. Let's not have it. Let's not talk about it. And let's not teach it. But once you put it in policy, it's saying that you agree with an entire system that says that you should be disenfranchised. That is one of the main sins of integration, is that we relied on being inclusive with the people who don't have a mind of and to know how to be inclusive. So, we're almost making ourselves slaves again to the enslaver. The enslaver has never wanted you to be on as an equal to him. And so when you integrate, you're basically saying, I'm making myself subject to a mindset that don't see me as an equal. So that's going to be carried out from, I don't want to live beside you. I don't want to eat with you. And so we're looking at not just education. We're also looking at every form of life has when you're dealing with this as the premise, as politics, as law, because it starts in the mind first. And the mind creates the laws and the policies. So this is what people think of you. They just solidify it in policy.
Yeah, I would like to ask you two a question, right? And I think this is important.
Yes.
Right? Black studies. What was the purpose of black studies then, and what is the purpose of black studies now?
Well, that's good, Brother Kevin, because black studies, like you said, is the origin of civilization. So you don't have a study without us. Right. It's almost like cutting out your own history. A lot of people say black history is American history. No, black history is world history. Right. And it goes into every dynamics. It's Asian. It is Russia. It is every little island, the island we don't know about. You can't have humanity. If we're the first humans, you don't have a humanity without black melanated people. And that's what black means, is melanated. Now as you move away from the equator or closer to the equator, and we know about how things evolve. How does humanity? And I'm very sorry that has happened to you. But when you defy science, that's science. That's scientific. That does not even have. You don't even have an argument against black people. You have an argument against science. Right. And science is more powerful than black people, because we have seen it proves us of who we are. But you can go into Africa and find a whole race of albino blacks. You can find blacks with blue eyes and blonde hair, but be as black as the night, because we come in so many diverse dispositions. It is America who have defined the black as a certain type, but we come in so many variations. We come we represent humanity in so many different ways, and our adaptation, us being able to adapt in so many environments. Unfortunately, what they're kicking is science. And we all know that if you kick science, you're really kicking God. Now, who I often say, who the Western world is mad at, is they're mad at the Creator. We didn't create ourselves. And they're so mad that they love to give themselves legal law to change, alter, dismantle, because they can't control it. I think it goes back to you, Brother Ausar, who said that most of their behaviors is about control and power. And so we never wanted to dominate white blood or white faces or cut and paste whiteness. We never cut off their nose or stole their artifacts to show that they didn't exist. Right. That has nothing to do with us. That is internally, when they see themselves, we are the mirror. When you see us and then you look at yourself, you automatically have a problem with yourself. So you lash out at everybody else. There is a medical diagnosis that talks about when people impose their hatred on you, self-hatred, but they impose it on you. Most of what we're seeing is people who feel insignificant That's why they say they are superior. And so they spend a whole lot of time trying to convince you that they're superior. Well, if you're superior, you wouldn't be intimidated by my black.
Right.
You see, if you were superior, you would embrace. Nothing could take you off the top. So you would embrace other cultures. You would embrace black studies. But if you're not, you will find yourself doing everything that you can to undermine, break, control, and you will use religion. You will use babies. You will use whatever you have to do, which is almost a form of mental illness.
And not only are they pushing their superiority, and I'm gonna get to your the question you just asked, but
I hope I answered your.
Oh yeah.
they also push inferiority on us, and
They imposed it, yes,
right,
sir.
and so black studies is important. It would have been important for me to learn at a certain time in my life because it would have gave me the courage to use my imagination and my creativity
Yes.
to produce a different type of lifestyle. So not knowing the greatness that my brothers and sisters had accomplished in their life, by not learning that through the educational system, kind of derails you from going certain ways or whatever. You understand where I'm coming at?
Sure.
Yeah, because if I had known about Imhotep during my school days, then I would known that hey, I could build a pyramid, or at least have the means to get one built, or I can instead of just thinking of Pythagoras,
Right.
the Pythagoras theorem,
Theorem.
I know that Imhotep, Amenhotep, I know that they're mathematicians. So mathematics comes from someone that looked like me, so it's inside of me also.
Sure.
You know, I
Yes.
kind of
Yeah,
That's pretty
I
good.
wanted to add on to it because there are multiple purposes for black studies and why the black youth sparked the movement, because what they were doing was helping to spark a revolutionary movement for liberation, and power and independence. And that was like when you spoke about, some of the earlier scholars like W.E.B. Du Bois and Carter,
G.
G.
Woodson.
Woodson, and what they were doing, because as they saw the necessity, the need, because of the condition that we had been put in. And one of our, great philosophers, scholars, psychologists, Dr. Amos Wilson says, when the people live in a condition so long, the condition starts to live in them,
That's
right?
true.
And so with some of our great minds like W.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, and many more, Francis Chris Wilson, they understood everything that happened to us, that we had to start working on our minds. And it took certain type of knowledge and information to start transforming our minds so that we can stand upright as a people, right? So black studies has a lot of purposes. It's to liberate the mind, also to give a true account on history so we won't be put at a disadvantage, right? And you can tell by, all the brilliant scholars, authors, historians, revolutionaries that we had, how much of a need that there's is for us to have even more today, right?
That's true.
Because the fight and the struggle continues. For us to even have to have a specific um, study, a department of studies, for us to liberate ourselves, right? Because when we're talking about, living in a world where the criminals make the laws and the criminals are in control, and we're looked at as the bad guys because of the propaganda, because of the soft power. So when they look at black people, when they see us, they're looking at us as inferior.
It's true.
And they basically projected that on us, where a lot of us think that we're inferior.
That's right.
And that's why the need for black studies is so important, because it also helps us with the knowledge of self. It helps us with our philosophy of Maya, the philosophy of enlightenment, truth, justice, and righteousness, giving us our cultural values and views that are second to none. And what that does, it lets us understand that okay, we've been miseducated, as Carter G. Woodson said and wrote in the book, where we're thinking that we're behind without really understanding that we started everything basically that we see on the planet. The foundation comes from Africa. And that's why African studies is so important, and it had multiple purposes because it was a revolutionary move. And also I want to say this, that I think that it's important for us to understand that the colleges, the universities, right, Department of Education, they're going to be totally opposed to anything that's going to liberate us. So when we're talking about black studies, it's important for us to form our own institutions, within our communities where we can teach freely, because they ban a lot of books, like they ban the critical race theory books because of Derek Bell. Anything that makes sense and they ban, we need to look at it 100 times harder, right? Because apparently it's something in there that they don't want us to see, that they've identified as truth, right? And they even had black people talking against critical race theory just to go along, with the people who are in control.
Brother Kevin, well said. Let me ask you a question. When we talk about black studies and its importance, we have HBCUs all over the country. We have some form of black studies. Is that enough? Because based off of what you even mentioned on last, I think not this last segment, but the segment before last, you gave us Dr. John Henry Clark's take on what is the purpose of education. And last I checked, it was to empower. Now, that's a total contradiction if we're looking at the manifestations of education today, because if a HBCU is teaching black studies, where's the empowerment?
No, it is not nowhere nearly enough, and I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of times we think just studying something is going to liberate us, but it's not. It's going to take action. It's going to take, and this is important, and this is one of the things that Dr. Malana Karenga basically points out, is the importance of culture and community working hand in hand.
Yes.
Right. That's what it's going to take.
Yes.
It takes community. It takes culture. It takes, as Kwame Ture always says, organize, organize, organize. We have to be in contact with one another. We have to believe in one another, have confidence. And this is another thing I want to say about black studies. Black studies is not just studying black authors, historians, revolutionaries, and black people.
Right.
Right? We study all people.
Yes.
Because all people come from black people.
That's right.
African people.
Right.
We study
so it's automatically inclusive.
What was the great president of Cuba? Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
We study him.
I have a phone call coming in.
Okay.
Already on. Peace, brother. You on with Africans United? Know that self.
Hotep brothers, Hotep sisters. It's good to see you all right now.
Hotep,
Baba.
Beautiful. Wow.
Listen, I just wanted to call in briefly. It wasn't planned, but listen, when we talk about black studies, can I lay something on you for just a moment? Black studies began in the home. They begin from the day that you're born until you make your transition. It is on us to study us and to study the rest of the world. And for those of us who spend our lives working in HBCUs, there is where, if possible, you get the essential knowledge to lead you through the rest of your life. What we used to say in HBCUs is that you can go to a TWI where you hope that they don't ruin you. But in an HBCU, we turn water into wine.
Yeah.
Now, I appreciate you, and thank you very much, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you, Baba.
Thank you so
yes,
much.
indeed.
Yes.
Yes, and like I was saying, Fidel Castro for one, right? And Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam is another one to really, really focus on because here
I ain't heard
you
of that one.
learn
Say that again.
Ho
Ho
Chi
Chi
Minh.
Minh.
Here you learn of a great leader who really inspired his people. And he told the United States this. He said that we can lose 10 men to one of your men and we're going to still win the war and defeat you. And that was just the will of the people. That they was willing to do everything in their power to fight for their liberation. And in the end, they won. They lost over 4 million people. They lost a lot of people as compared to the United States, but they got their liberation, right? And that's important. And another great general to study is Sun Tzu,
Yeah.
right? Who wrote the Art of War 500
Yes.
BC, right? And the one thing we're always talking about, we're at war. And this is the one thing Sun Tzu said, the first principle. War is about life and death. Plain and simple.
That's right.
And if we don't understand, once we understand that, life and death, that's going to give you the courage to do what you have to do to be able to survive. Remember last week when we talked about Dr. Amos Wilson, what he said about the purpose of education, right, was to ensure your biological existence, the very survival of your people, right? And Dr. John Henry Clark said what? The purpose of education is what? To attain, maintain, and use power. Yeah. And Kwame Ture said the purpose of education is to alleviate the pain of the suffering. Yes, right? Sir. So we have a lot of different purposes when it comes to education, when it comes to black studies, right? Because there's so many different components. And I just think that it's important for us to not only, study ourselves, but also study our enemies, right? And understand our enemies in the way that they think, right? In the way that they operate in secrecy, right? All of these things are important for us to understand when we're studying black studies because we're not studying just to study. And like Dr. Kim just asked me, is that enough? It takes more than that. It takes community. It takes commitment. It takes knowledge. It takes loyalty, right? It takes courage. And it takes being creative and innovative.
That's right.
And understanding that we have minds today to be able to think, right? And another thing that was so important that Sun Tzu said, right, in the art of war, and that is deception, right? Because normally when we think about deception, we look at it to be deceived in a negative way. But it's not always in a negative way.
That's right.
Right? Because at the end of the day, the first principle, war is about life and death.
That's
Cool.
good.
Yeah, he did some great name drops right there. Ho Chi Minh.
Ho Chi Minh.
Yeah, I'm get me a little research on him a little later. But I want to get into some intellectual giants. But before we get all the way to there, let's talk about that revolution that you
we just talked to an intellectual giant, Dr. Elijah Mickle, Baba
Atmos. Well, that's definitely true.
Right.
That's definitely.
Yes.
And it's always an honor.
Yes, it is.
Every time just to hear his voice when he called in.
Yes,
I agree.
Yeah. But let's talk about the student uprising that you kind of mentioned. Where the most dramatic breakthrough came at San Francisco State in 1968, where black students joined by the Third World Liberation Front, which was a group of a coalition of different ethnicities. Yeah. And they launched a strike that lasted months and became the longest student strike in American history. Their demand was not a token course, but an autonomous black studies department with real power, more black faculty, broad access to students of color, and a curriculum that reflected black life and history. The cost was heavy though. Arrests, suspensions, police repression, and professional risk for faculty who stood with students. But the result was historic. The first College of Ethnic Studies and the first Department of Black Studies in the nation. So what made the 1968 strike revolutionary? The demands, the coalition behind them, or the willingness to risk punishment for knowledge?
Wow. I mean, a lot make it revolutionary. You got to look at the time, 1968, 1969, right after the civil rights movement. Black Power was on the scene. With Stokely Carmichael, now known as Kwame Ture, and he was part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinated Committee. That was part of the civil rights movement. So, the young brothers and sisters, were very conscious and very mature and courageous, for such a young age, and every time I look at it and think about it, I say to myself, wow, we need to have that same type of energy amongst our young brothers and sisters today, not only at the university, campuses, but also just in society at large, where we become politically conscious of what's going on, what's being taught to us, what's being taught to our children, and just, having, the courage and the knowledge to push for something, that has proven to be so valuable in the black community, waking up so many brothers and sisters, right? And it's funny because, when I started studying, I was in federal prison, right? And, we didn't look at it as black studies, because we coming from the streets and things of that nature. We're looking at it as, self-improvement, ways to raise, our consciousness and things like that. So when we get out of prison, we'll be able to apply it, right? And, basically help out our community. So, black studies go on not only, and like Baba Akmos just said, it starts in the home.
Yes.
But it takes place, and yourself, brother, when you're on the prison yard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, brothers? They get together, you know what I mean, and they get serious.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, I was thinking this morning, I said, wow. I said, my life, everything that I've been through, if I wouldn't have went through a lot of the hard times I went through, I wouldn't be where I am today in my consciousness in this revolutionary move to help liberate black people all over the world, right? So I had to go through a lot of different challenges, to get to the knowledge that I got today. And I got that knowledge while I was on the inside, right? But we don't have to wait till we get on the inside to get that type of knowledge, right? We can form, not only just study groups and book clubs and things of that nature, but institutions.
Yeah.
To bring our brothers and sisters together, because it shouldn't take us having to go to prison to come into the knowledge of self.
That is correct.
That's what made me mad more than anything. I'm 42 years old, read the miseducation of the Negro, and I was kind of like, I said, I wasn't really mad, but I said, they fooled me. You know what I mean? They fooled all of us. They fooled, well, I ain't gonna say all of us, but most of us, a lot of us. Yeah. So I made up my mind that day that I'm going to do everything in my power, not only to help transform myself, but to try to be an inspiration to others so that they can transform themselves. And, of course, the more you study, the more your vision grows, and the more your consciousness expands, and the more you learn, you realize just how much work we have to do as a people.
And I went from St. Augustine's College. At that time, it was St. Augustine's College when I was there, to Elizabeth City State University. But I had no idea of knowledge of self until I got to until my incarceration time.
Yes.
And it started with the Nation of Gods and Earths, as I stated before. Brother brought me Supreme Understanding. I forget which book from Supreme Understanding he brought me, and then he brought me a book from Brother Akil called from Niggas to Gods. Yeah. And he brought me that part 1 and 2.
Yes.
And that's what started my journey right there.
Yes.
But Dr. Kim, you wanna jump in?
Well, I think knowledge comes from so many different places. Yeah. I certainly believe that Black studies must be taught in the home, and that is why it's important for us to go back and patch up the home, because our homes are in such disarray until many of our families are not even focused on black studies. They're more concerned with black survival.
Yeah.
And when you are in a setting where survival is preached, you're resilient. You bounce back. No, we do more than bounce back. At this point, we should be living. I think I can agree with Brother Kevin here when he says you shouldn't have to go to prison
Nah.
to learn knowledge of self. Knowledge of self should be taught at home so that you can govern yourselves accordingly. And actually, you develop a defense mechanism in your home for any lie. So you don't go 20, 30, 40 years with living a lie just to get by. There's a song by Mos Def and
Black Star, Most Definitely Quality.
yes, that says just to get by.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Oh wow! And they talk about the drugs, the alcohol, all of these things that they have done to accommodate just getting by. And that's why we definitely have to touch on the whole music industry because it's almost numbing us that we don't need black studies. Because if we had it, it would ground us. Black studies would give us the confidence, identity, all of the things that our community is missing, our children are depleted of. There is such an importance to having black community, black studies taught. And it should not be a thing where you have to choose because black studies is human studies.
Yes.
And I think that's where we need to start. And if you want to talk about humanity, you can't do it without talking about black studies first.
Right. And Brother Saul always speak on, and it's an imperative thing because building the institution for ourselves is it's going to be. I mean,
That's
just
number one.
It's number one. We really do because me, I got to speak on my life. I don't know if anyone in my household at that time when I was being brought up knew anything about black studies, you know.
Yes, that's
So-
the point.
Right. So it's hard to get sometimes to get it in the household or to, it's hard to get it there, especially during my time. But now, I will admit I got to do a better job with my children.
Teaching,
Yeah, yes,
making it
ma'am.
a priority.
Yes, ma'am. I do, I do a job, but I got to do a better job still making it a
I
priority.
think we teach in passing.
Man, I like to make a point because yes, brother, because like I was saying, I was like, darn, why didn't I get a chance to learn this information before I got to prison? Right? It was never presented to me. So that's why I said, well, and we formed KCSSU so that we can present it not only to the children in the community, but the whole community.
That is
Right.
correct.
Right? So, I think that, and then this is, and I mentioned this last week, that once we really start talking about, liberation, for black people, independence, the knowledge of self, right, and standing our ground and standing for justice, a lot of black people start running away because they feel like their shield of protection is the system controlled by white supremacy. They don't know anything else. And that's not to be hard on our brothers and sisters.
That's the
Because you
truth.
got to understand the mindset that we've been put in, right? Like I had stated earlier, when you live in a condition so long, the condition starts to live within you.
Yes.
So when I start speaking about the knowledge of self, black liberation, black power, African liberation, African power, to the ears of a lot of black people, it's foreign to them. And it's shocking, and they're not used to it. But like in the Kawita philosophy by Dr. Malana Karenga, he talks about language and logic. You have to have a liberational language, one that's going to liberate and free you. And your logic can't be the same as your enemies.
It's true.
You have to have a liberational logic, that which makes sense. Reasoning, you have to be able to reason, right? So what happens is a lot of times when our minds are used to hearing certain things, it automatically rejects it. It has a defense mechanism that when you're talking anything about uplifting black people, it's going to make other black people feel a certain type of way because
It's
they
true.
become a part of a system of oppression, and then we start participating in our own oppression.
It's
So
powerful.
when the black students fought for black studies, were they asking for inclusion or were they challenging who had the authority?
That's a good question because um, I think it's kind of both, because one thing, that, and I got to be honest about us, and you know, I ain't gonna just say the United States globally because
Yeah.
it's just as much, corruption and things going on with black people all over the world, wherever we are.
Right.
So, ask the question again, brother.
When the black students fought for black studies, were they
Yeah,
asking
it
for
was.
inclusion
Yeah,
or
like
were
I
they
say,
challenging
yeah,
authority?
inclusion because even though we challenge the system a lot of times, black people still want to be included and still really, really like white people. We think that white people can change, right? And start liking us. For some reason, we want to be liked by white people for so bad, and that really is a psychological um, problem that we're suffering from. Um, you know, when they call it what Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah.
when
Stockholm
you fall in
syndrome.
love with your
Oppress
oppressor,
them.
Yeah.
and that's a psychological barrier that we have to cross as a people, right? Because a lot of people who suffer from an inferiority complex, if they were to learn the right knowledge, they will overcome it. A lot of people choose to take that route because it benefits them,
That's good.
and there's so much self hatred within some people that you can't get it out.
Right.
And that's a reality. And we talked about traders last week. That's a reality that we have to start dealing with, right? Because we can continue to let our great leaders be assassinated and betrayed, and nothing happened to those who betray, right? We talked about how dealing with the traders. We have to deal with them
Yeah.
um, decisively, quickly, and decisively, swiftly and decisively, without a doubt, because it hurts us in so many ways, right? And that's why the knowledge of self is so important because, like I say, black studies is important, but we're going to find within all ranks of our people, there are going to be those who are going to side with the enemy, right? And that's one of the things also um, in the art of war when they talk about secrecy and spies. They always use spies and put them in our movements, right? To cripple us and to know the things that we're going to be doing. So we have to be conscious and we have to even get to the point where we become super conscious. And we have to be able to weed out those who don't have our best interests at heart. And it's a lot of them. And we come across them each and every day. Some of them are our friends. Some of them are, unfortunately, our families. But we have to stand firm and we have to stand tall because if we're going to have any type of liberation, we cannot have our own brothers and sisters siding with the enemy.
Dr. Ken, how you feel about it?
Well, I think like most would say, if we're going to tackle the issue, we have to be honest first. And I don't believe we're dealing. I often say we're actually functioning in the mind of a sociopath. That's what this country in the West is. One big sociopathic imagination of fantasies. And so we are forced to pretty much extract our humanity from this system. So having black studies also says black life, black power, black medicine, black you name it. We're actually dismantling ourselves, and if we're not extracting, we're plugging it in and giving away our power.
That's factual. We definitely get to giving away our power. And I ain't know what you finished. I'm sorry.
Well, and if we willingly giving it away for survival. So when we talk about forced integration, could we not have kept our power, who we were without being inside? So here we are with this concept that if we integrate, we would have to take down our blackness and become one with the people who don't see us as equals. So we're basically casting away our own existence just to exist
Right.
with, if that makes any
No, it
sense.
do. And I think Dr. King had said, yeah, by the end of his I don't want to say it sound maliciously, but by the end of it, he said, I believe I led my people into a burning building, stating that the integration might not been what was um, the best in our best interest. I mean, if you're going into somebody else's home, then you got to live by their rules.
That's true. And when you
Point blank
willingly
period.
do it, that's why I say,
Yeah,
and then if you're the conditions that you create forces us to integrate, because alone without you burn down our churches, you burn down our schools, you don't give us the books. Now we pay the same taxes, but you don't give us the same representation. So now you feel like, okay, just for us to get the books, get the bus, not to be able to walk so far, now we have to find ways to incorporate with you all. But their mindset about us have never changed. So we did cosmetic changes. We did superficial changes. We did stuff on the outside. We sat beside them, but that didn't make us equal. And so we have to make sure that what we're defining as true life, that is what we are. And I think that comes from a place of liberation that breaks not just us, but it also breaks them. It brings us back down to where we all need to be. Why? Because we are, again, the foundations of humanity.
yeah. Let me ask you this real quick, Dr. Kim. Before I don't want to stray too far, and I know brothers already jumped back in. Before they started burning down the churches, institutions, and stuff, was it getting burned down before we was asking to be a part of their system, integrating with them?
Yes,
They were still we were still under attack.
we was under attack before. We were not protected. And we came up with the concept, and that's why when you quoted Dr. King, who said, I believe, because it was the illusion of inclusion. If we be included, we were going to be protected. And that has not changed. The assaults may have not been burning us down, but the assaults, the outcomes are still the same.
Right.
So we're still being excluded. Now you have to make a whole entire commission called the DEI board. Or, now you have to make up things. And now they come against that. So, mind you, we weren't included. And then we became included. And now you come against the inclusion. So, what do you want? You don't want anything. You just want to make us miserable. You want to keep the power, but you want us to pay into a system that keeps undermining us. So, we pay whether we're included or we're not, whether we're integrated or we're not. And it has never been to fulfill the duties of making us equal. And equal to who? Until we get to those points where we ask the real questions, we'll be chasing freedom that no man can give us.
Nobody else can give it. Brother Ausar.
Yes. I think that, it just shows throughout history the damages that has been done to our minds. And I mean, you can even see it in a lot of our, great brothers and sisters who fought for liberation, like Dr. Martin Luther King, who, like you say at the end, he admitted that he felt like he took his people into a burning house, which was a great admission by him.
Yes,
Oh,
I
yeah.
agree.
A great
You know,
admission.
that took a lot of courage.
Took a lot of courage. It took a lot of honesty.
Yes.
And it spoke about him. And he realized that he had put his trust in white people, thinking that he could appeal to their morality. And they don't have any morality. Right? And I think that that's a lesson for us to be learned. From the civil rights era, as far as integration. Also, the question you asked, Dr. Kim, about were they bombing us and burning us out? Of course, they've always done that. Anything to instill fear within our minds, within our consciousness, because that's part of the power and control. And, every time, I think about, the motherland, I think about Africa, and I think about the 1.4 billion people, our brothers and sisters, and I think about the fratricide, brothers killing brothers, in Sudan, the Congo, and all over Africa, right? Just like, what was it, the Tutsis and the Hutus, where over like 800,000 was murdered. And I think about it and I say, wow, we use all that energy in destroying and murdering one another. But we'll use every excuse in the world not to fight the real enemy. See, and that's where not only, it's not all the leaders in Africa and all the militaries in Africa, because it's not only in Africa, it's in the Caribbean, it's in the United States, it's wherever we are, right? Where we won't take the responsibility of uniting our brothers and sisters, right, to channel their energy to fight the real enemy, right? And that's why, I study, I study our greats, but I study other greats too, and I name some of them, right? Because a lot of it's dealing with the mindset, thinking, see? Because Sun Tzu, he wasn't only a great general and a warrior, he was a philosopher, right? And strategist, right? And they strategized on war and the psychology of war and the way we must think, because it's not always a physical war.
No.
Because the best way to defeat the enemy is through thinking.
True.
Right? So that's the first thing we need to understand. If you can defeat the enemy without firing a shot, and then you've done a great job. Right?
It's true.
And that's why we have to develop our minds. And the first thing our ancestors taught in the 10 virtues of initiative, the first one is control your thoughts.
It's true.
Let them be revolutionary, liberational thoughts and logic that's going to help shape our minds to deal with the enemy. Because another thing Sun Tzu said, know thyself, know thy enemy, know the environment, know the terrain, right? So we have to really get serious in our thought pattern, right? And I'm really speaking about Africa, because it don't make no sense for Africa, for us to have all the resources that control the whole world and 80% of our people to be living up under the poverty rate. We have got to do better. We can talk about the enemy all we want. We can talk about the invasions all we want. We can talk about what happened in 1884, 1885. What's happening today?
It's true.
If we want to look at what's happening today, let's look at the AES. Let's look at Mali. Let's look at Niger. Let's look at Burkina Faso. Let's look at them 3 great military leaders and what they're doing. They have created a model for liberation and power. The only thing the rest of Africa has to do is follow the model.
I totally agree with
Yes,
that.
indeed.
Yeah. Well,
But they also, like you said, they have to know themselves. They have to know themselves, and that's a huge component as to them deciding that they would still want to be co-partners with the colonizers or the imperialists. So, like, they made a conscious decision, because there's a part of them that still don't know who they really are.
That's right.
So they don't see themselves in a powerful position. They see the those oppressors as more powerful than themselves, and they see the oppressor more powerful than their own unity with their own brothers and sisters. So if you're not eating, dining, interacting with the oppressor, then you're not powerful. You're not substantiating. I mean, but that's everywhere. That we have to really reckon. That's why it was so important for us to make the conversation public about the effects of the Ghana resolution.
Right.
Because how many of us actually believe that that was okay for us? Like that should not have never rested at all. Like we went on like, what color blinds are we gonna put up the next day? Nobody was infuriated. We should have been infuriated that we live in the actual country that actually did the atrocity. First of all, we're not just talking about like we're looking overseas and looking at Russia like that's messed up. Right. No. It happened to us, and we had no anger, no recourse but we went on shooting each other in the streets. Yeah. We went on, and to me tells you how deep the oppression goes, how undermined our communities are, and the cognitive dissonance of oppression that has happened to our people, where you don't even flinch when the country tells you, I won't even recognize any of your pain. Like, not a pastor, and mind you, I'm gonna have to call out my lovely pastors this morning, because somewhere on this Sunday you're out there speaking the truth. You're talking about Jesus, you're talking about God, you're talking about all these things, but God is a God of justice. God created justice. I don't care how you cut it. You cannot say he didn't if you are benefiting from the sun. The sun itself is a form of justice to humanity. It says that I will never let you go cold. I will grow the food for you so you can eat. One thing can give us so much. Why? Because that is the Creator's love for humanity and creation. All of creation benefits. That is a just God.
Right. That's equity.
That's equity in itself. You don't even have to do anything but enjoy.
Yeah.
So how could you sit in a country who deliberately deprived you of that justice, of any justices, and don't hold them accountable, but you continue to preach God? You can't preach God until you say, when I look at you eyeball to eyeball as a human, and you deny me my healing. Because for America to have said, this, you are correct, that was the gravest atrocity. Right. It's the first form of healing for us. That our own, quote unquote, our country, quote unquote, our country, would have said, I'm sorry, and we acknowledge it. Not that you had to do anything. In itself, just acknowledging starts the healing. Have you ever been hurt by somebody and they act like they didn't hurt you?
Oh, yeah.
It's different if they say, I acknowledge that I hurt you.
I like to add to that, because it's, that's a strategic move on the United States part.
Right.
And the 27 countries in the European Union who abstained from voting, and the United States voted against it. Because, one, they don't want to acknowledge, because they know they'll be culpable.
That's right.
And responsible for the crimes, and with crimes come punishment. Right?
That's
so
right.
they like to keep us up in arms. But see, we're remaining cool, calm, and collected, and poised. And I'm speaking of President John Mahama of Ghana and the African Union and everybody else that's doing the work, because we're not going to let that slow us down, because the United States voted against it, because it was passed, it was approved, and at the European Union, because they know that they are the culprits, right? And they don't want to have to pay the reparations that they own, and there's other psychological reasons why.
Yeah.
They don't want to acknowledge. They want to try to make us think that it was legal at the time, because they said it was legal. You see what I'm saying? So it's all mind games, psychological games. We can't fall into that, right? Because they've already shown us throughout history not only how they feel about us. That's not going to change. And I don't even know why we should want it to change. Maybe we should change the way we feel about them.
Okay.
Right. That makes more sense. Remember, what Dr. Malana Karenga said, right? Language and logic. He said, our logic can't be the same logic as our oppressors and our enemies. We have to have a liberational logic, that which is going to free us and liberate us. So we can't agree with them on anything, right? We got to oppose them, everything that they do, because everything they do is to oppose us, right? They've been trying to educate us in the Department of Education for over 100 years and are very unsuccessful at doing it. And it's not that hard because they don't want to do it. So there's no need for us to complain. And that's why we're always talking about on this show, building our own institutions, right? And not only building our own institutions here, really, connecting with our brothers and sisters, globally. That's the most important thing. And I want everybody to really pay attention, to what I'm about to say and what I had just said a little bit earlier, right? Africa, which provides the world with so many resources, but yet 80% of the people live under poverty. That's a problem with leadership, right? Because leadership has got to be able to fulfill the will of the people, right? And they have to have the people's best interests at heart, the way Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso is doing, for the country and for their people.
Yeah, I think Dr. Kim had a shirt on last week that shows a lot of those resources that Africa do provide.
Yes, that's right.
And with all those type of resources, there's no way that 80% of the continent should be under the poverty level.
Right, and I'm gonna be honest, because we got to come on hard, right? Because true reparations is owed to us, right? By the atrocities that's been done to us. But Africa, we talk about what they call it, land. When they give the land out to people, if we really understand how big Africa is, we have all the land that we need in Africa. The continent is humongous. It's no reason for us to allow others to come in and continue to exploit us from a conference that was held in 1884 and 1885, right? And for the people to still suffer, And we got so many brilliant brothers and sisters there and warriors. It's no reason why on this planet. And I think that, we need to look at what took place in Vietnam, right? And because they fought and they fought and they fought and they was losing people, but they wore them down. And that's what you got to do sometimes. You can't always give in. I think with us as a people, it has to be our will, right? We have to have the will to really fight the enemy just as much as we have the will to fight one another.
Let me ask this, especially about what Ghana proposed about the reparation thing, and how many, especially here in the United States, how many of us do you think heard about it or even know about it?
I think a very small percentage.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem, is that our hearts are not in tune. When you're looking for liberation is not something that's given. It's something that your heart is. So for me, as a person who believes in liberation, just watching that on television and seeing them deny us is not enough. I won't just move on and make that okay. We have to stop the atrocities. Them saying you are that we will deny you is also saying that we are co-sponsoring your death. Because remember, like you said, when you talk about education being a part of life and death, or how we do power is life and death, anytime you spew that out into the spiritual hemisphere with your words, you are co-signing the continuation. You won't even deal with the transatlantic slave trade. That means you're still on board with whatever happens to us now. And so that should not be okay with us. The problem is we have normalized our abuse. We've paid for our abuse. And now we are basically used to the abuse. And that should never be. We saw that during the 400 years. How many people walked off the plantation? How many people stayed? How many people stayed after they were so-called let go or liberated? How many people said, well, Master, where I'm going? Where we going to go? Like Malcolm X said. So we're still in those, the fact that we're having this conversation, that there's still some form of enslavement today in 2026 should not be okay with us. And that is why it's important for us to watch the model of Burkina Faso and our three kings come together and then call for the unity across the diaspora. We have a duty to respond. The body responds. If it is sour on the stomach, the stomach will automatically regurgitate something that is not right. We should never learn to swallow or keep down stuff that is blatantly toxic to our communities, to our families, to our people. And so we send that message out, not just in the conversation here today, but we're reminding black people all over the world, right here in America, right here in the city of Raleigh, nothing is worth true freedom. Your job is not worth true freedom. We're asking you to stand up. That's right, those in high places or think they high but really low. Those that are getting paid and 401ks or what have you, you don't want to trade. You traded your soul but don't have real freedom. This is the time now. We watched them celebrate 250 years yesterday. And you could not believe the black people who was running around with red, white, and blue on, happy, smiling, stars and stripes, forgetting about the stripes that our people wore on their backs. This is a problem mentally that we want to be so accepted because propaganda, again.
Soft power.
Yeah. Millions of dollars is spent on, we're going to have lights and, fireworks, and you got people driving all the way to South Carolina to go get them fireworks so they could be a part of the buffoonery.
Yeah. She spoke on that 250 years celebration yesterday. Let me, because I might be a little ignorant to it, because I was brought up in a North Carolina school system. I think it was in 1776.
Yes.
Independence Day. So was black folk freed in 1776?
No, sir. 1860. We didn't become free until almost 100 years later.
I was just making sure. I didn't know for sure. But should education prepare people only for careers or for identity and community responsibility?
That's good. Absolutely. We should be focused on identity and community responsibility. And if we are denied that, then we are under oppressive regimes. We are not free. We are not citizens. We're something else. And I think that's the other thing. What are we using? No citizen should be forced to go into a burning building to survive. It don't even make conscious sense.
Right. Shouldn't be forced to. If it don't sit well on your soul, then you shouldn't be forced to have to do it. Brother Sar, you want to touch on that or?
But before you go, I want to ask Brother Sar, do you think some black people are deliberately remaining ignorant so they don't have to deal with these issues?
That's a really good question. I wouldn't say deliberately, remaining ignorant. I would say more comfortable and complacent with what they know, and really, that's a really good question because I think you're basically saying trying to duck responsibility. I think that a lot of times we want to duck responsibility because we don't want to take on the hard challenges that we have to take on as a people. Like when we see one of our little 1-year-old babies get killed, you see so many different black people on social media trying to defend the officer and blame the mother for a white police officer shooting a 1-year-old baby shooting in a moving car, right? So we suffer a lot, mentally from an inferiority complex.
That's true.
And we
That's
always
good.
try to make, excuses for when they harm us. You know, and we try to basically sweep it up under the rug. I mean, because we can name so many cases where, you know, young black men, young black boys, black women, black girls, you know, so you got the men, you got the women, you got the boys, and you got the girls,
Right.
you know, that we can speak on and say their names
Sure.
being murdered, right? Which basically is not only, you know, is it unjust, but also, you know, they like to do that to further intimidate us, right? And then they put it all over the news and everywhere, and because they want to show us that y'all can stand up all y'all want, we're going to still do what we want to do, shoot y'all down, kill y'all, and nothing is going to happen. Now, every now and then they have to make an example out of one of their own, like the George Floyd incident, right? But you don't see that happening too much more. But that was a kind of like a global movement when that happened to George Floyd, but then it died out. So they don't want that to happen no more. You get what I'm saying?
Sure.
Everybody was saying that, you know, the cop was wrong for what he did, but now what they're doing is they don't want to do that no more. So they want to try to get behind the police officers, right? So it don't become a global movement no more. Just like what happened in Shelby, North Carolina, when the police officer beat that sister down and kept punching her in the face, right? See, as black men, right, we got to stand up when we can't settle and go for none of that foolishness.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's time for us to really stand up and be warriors and put protection on our children and put protection on our women and put protection on our communities.
Brother Ausar, I hear you talk about the responsibility and the complicity. Whose job is it to make sure they come out of those mental stances?
That who come out of?
Those who are black officials, black politicians, our black heads of state.
Yeah, it's hard to find it. It's hard to find a good, honest black politician, or some type of official. I mean,
who haven't been compromised.
Right, indeed.
Okay.
There are some out there who do everything in their power, but after a while, they learn that they can't just themselves, defeat the system.
Gotcha.
So they start going along with the system.
Go along to get
It's
along.
just like the bad cop, good cop illusion, because there's no such thing as a good cop and a bad cop. Because if the good cop is complicit to what the bad cop is doing, he's a bad cop as well.
Absolutely.
Right, and if they can't, and if the police department, if they can't weed out their officers, and then they don't need to have no department, because they're full of corrupt officers. And I think that's important for us to understand that, you know, anytime you look at, you know, a black police officer or black sheriff, you got to question their sanity, because who are they basically going out to arrest? It's not the Europeans, because they're not the targets. The whole police department, police force was put together to do what? And that's why black studies is so important, because we learn all of these facts.
That's good.
In black studies, right? Black studies prepare us for a world that has turned against us, but black studies also teach us who we were before the invasions, which I think is important. Right, and not only that, like when we talk about Shetawat Netta, we talk about the values, we talk about the principles, we talk about the philosophy, we talk about the way of life of Shetawat Netta and Maya, right? And this was even before the invasions.
Right.
And then we have great scholars that come after, like Dr. Malana Karenga, who came up with the Kawita philosophy, which includes what's going on today, currently in our community. So now we have a philosophy that's going to help us to liberate ourselves from oppression and understand it even better by studying our greats that came before us. And another great that I think we need to study when it comes to warfare is Shaka Zulu, right? And the warrior, and what he was able to do. And that's why the oppression on South Africa, the apartheid, was as intense as it was, because they fought and they fought and they fought. And they was kicking butt for a long time till they was overpowered by superior weaponry.
That's true. Let me ask you something, Brother Kevin. So then when we talk about black studies, and it is in perhaps your institutions of learning here in America. When do we, because the disconnect that I'm seeing is that, yes, we may have Black studies, but we don't see it applied, because what they're preparing, you can study all you want, but then the knowledge, the training. For instance, I went to Wake Tech and I also went to Campbell University. We could learn about criminal justice. When you go out that door, your training for BLET or your basic law enforcement training is geared towards white supremacy and their perception. So even though you learn about black studies, Black history, Black civilization, where your reality is that you go out equipped to carry out white supremacy and its powers. How do you see us breaking that constant cycle of HBCU in name, but then application? Because you said, well, Brother Escents, when you talked about we got SNCC, we had many organizations, we had black college students who right here in Raleigh put it to action, put things into play. The resistance, what we call resistance, not so much resilience, but resistance that we put on against white supremacy to change their laws and institutions was there. We don't see that anymore. Have we become too comfortable? Is that no longer our focus? What are we doing to change the directory?
I think Baba Atmos basically stated it when he said it starts in the home.
Okay.
All right. And I think that, and I talked to my sister had called me the other day. She had watched our show, our program last week, and she really liked it. And, but she really liked the question about how can we get Shetawat Netta out there, to the families in our communities.
That's good.
And she started, I was getting me some rest, but I did hear her. And she said something about apps. And then that's another thing that Baba Atmos has been talking to me about, is forming, online courses. So, we got to get with our team at KCSSU and start putting things together, because, I really like what Baba Atmos said about starting in the home, because that's the greatest place to start. Yeah. You know what I mean? Get the families, get information in there for the families to start studying, basic information, dealing with the knowledge of self, dealing with Maya, dealing with our culture, values, and foods, which I think is the most important thing. Everybody keeps talking about the culture, the culture, the culture. They say the culture, but they can't even break down what the culture is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? It's just a cool thing to say, the culture. But the culture comes with values and views, things that we do, things that's going to benefit us as a people.
That's right.
Right? Like truth, justice, and righteousness. Not stabbing your brother in the back. That's not part of our culture.
No.
Going robbing another crew or whatever, that's not part of our culture. Mm-hmm. So a lot of things we want to say that are our culture is not our culture. Right? Not our original culture. Mm-hmm. See, and the thing about it, another thing that Dr. Molina talks about is to rescue and reconstruct our culture, because we know our culture needs rescuing. We see this, what's taking place with a lot of our young people and even older people, right, from not having the knowledge of self, by being oppressed. And I'm not saying this in a negative way about our people, but just being up under oppression.
Let's be honest.
Right, what being up under oppression to make you do. It'll make you revert to doing things that you normally wouldn't do.
That is correct.
If not only you weren't oppressed, but if you had the knowledge of self.
That's
See,
right.
because if you got the knowledge of self and you're being oppressed, you're going to deal with it in a different type of way than if you ain't got the knowledge of self and you being oppressed.
That's true.
Because if you got the knowledge of self, you're going to do what? You're going to do everything in your power to what? Put a stop to the oppression. Not just for you, but for you and all your brothers and sisters on the planet.
That is correct. That's good. That's good. And the home is the foundation of education anyway. And matter of fact, it's the place where you practice what you learn.
That's right. That's right.
With proper guidance and controls from someone or people who won't deter you the wrong way or guide you off willingly or deliberately. You're looking at parents as your first place of coaching. That you can, everything that you do is applied. Applied science is not just when you get to college. Applied science is at home. So we teach you and we train you right here. That's where it says train up a child. Well, training takes action and movement and teaching. And yes, I couldn't agree more that those are, and that's why it's so important for us to fight for the first institution, is to put our households back together in a holistic way. And no, and saying, teaching our young girls, and don't get me wrong, yes, I was a single parent, but I also was a married parent. That, you can do good, you can do all this stuff by yourself. So they turned you into Wonder Woman. And so you don't need no man to do anything. And, it's just so diabolical and perverted. I would say this country have broken, systematically warred against the black family, and then gave you a song to go with it at how tough you can be. And, so they've trained, the educational system have trained deliberately against what is, the foundations of family and home and education. Yeah. And so that's why we're looking at some of the outcomes. But it is imperative that we go back and we talk about, and I can't, when we talk about Black studies, I can't say enough how much it has to be looked upon as world history just as much as Black history.
Yes.
No, definitely. And a lot of our people, we get to a certain status in our life, financially or career wise or whatever.
Western status.
Right. And then you and then you push that out to the family. And what I'm trying to say is that they get complacent.
Yes.
And they think, the system is fine. The system worked for me. It worked, it could work for you then. And It don't always be like that. And then the ones that's not in that upper or middle class, they gonna just wait for Jesus to come and save them instead of
they'll get theirs in the by and by.
Yeah, instead of stepping out for itself. So what is the relationship between knowledge and power in Black studies?
It's a great relationship when knowledge and power is instituted.
Yes.
When knowledge and power is activated, not only taught. See, it's one thing to learn,
right,
and it's another thing to put what you learn into action.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many things that can be done to help improve our lives, the lives of our brothers and sisters and children. And we've been, doing some of those things at KCSSU, like the community garden, right? And like the rites of passage classes, which the children and you did a wonderful job teaching the children, about the Nile Valley, Africa, and our contributions.
We taught them about meditating.
Yes, indeed, meditation.
Yes,
all of those great things. And also, things we can do. And I remember we was at a meeting one time, and I said something about a community cleanup, and people didn't really think that was a good idea. And look here, anytime you cleaning up your community is a great idea, right?
That's
because
right.
You're setting an example.
That's right.
You're showing the community that we are valuable as a people. And if your community is clean, just like if you clean, you feel better about yourself.
That is so true.
Right? And these are planting seeds when we do things like that and get into the community. There are so many things that we can do. And, we always say that, it takes finances to raise a nation, and it do. But there are some things that we can do that don't cost a lot of money.
That's true.
That we can get out there in the community and do and educate.
That's right.
And clean up and talk to the people. Introduce ourselves.
Right.
Introduce literature. Introduce literature to the parents. Right. Start listening to what they got to say. Listen to our brothers and sisters out there. Because unfortunately, a lot of times when we start getting knowledge, we think because we get knowledge that the people who don't study ain't got knowledge. Right? But we have an indwelling intelligence within each and every one of us, which is the God force, right? So once we activate that force within us, we start opening up. And that's why it's important for us to listen to what our brothers and sisters have to say. Because, see, they can show us and point us to their interests, what they see, right? Because they're living life too. We're all living life.
That's
and
right.
we're seeing things through different lenses. But we need to all come together, right? Understand we got a common enemy, right? And understand that we are put in these conditions for a purpose, and that is to keep us down. And that's why community cleanups is a great idea,
It is.
right? Because
It's
we come
wonderful.
together, we clean up together, we keep our places clean, we try to encourage, inspire the brothers and sisters, let them know you don't have to go to prison to get the knowledge of self.
That's
Don't
right.
waste all them years in prison like I did. I ain't gonna say I wasted them though, but don't go ahead to spend all that time in prison and then come out here. Get the knowledge while you out here.
That's right.
And we have to give a lot of credit, to the brothers and sisters, coming out of the 1800s and the early 1900s, like Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, Marcus Garvey, and all of those people who understood, the need to get a strong foundation of the knowledge of self and identity and have pride within ourselves. And we have to continue that. And we have to continue those type of teachings. And we have to let our young brothers and sisters know that a lot of these trending things are not in our best interest. Like when they talk about crashing out and things of that nature. And I think, brother, I mentioned to you earlier, I was watching something and the young brother was telling the other brother, you just mad because you old. You just mad that you old. You 30.
Whoa. Is that
And when he said that he was 30, he's still a baby, but they don't realize that.
Right.
And the goal should be to get old.
Right.
To get as old as we can get.
Right.
It's not a negative. We are still here. And that's the thing. That's why respect is so important, for our elders. And, and we got to teach our youth that because, unfortunately, and I've dealt with it myself, they'll stand up to you face to face and try to cuss you out. You know what I mean?
It's true, it's
And
true.
I know you remember one of our students,
Yeah.
but he's a good student. You
Oh,
know what I
Lord.
mean? And I understand.
Yeah.
And and great kid. He just need that love and he need that guidance the way a lot of our children do, right? So there's there's a responsibility that we have, and I'm glad that like I say, Baba called in and spoke on, the home.
Yes.
And that's why we got to get in these
Gotta
communities.
get in
We
there.
got to talk to these young sisters, these young mothers,
Yes,
talk to
yes.
these young brothers, these young fathers, you know what I mean? And encourage them to get the right knowledge so that we can pass it down and ensure that our future generations will have liberation and power.
Well, I'm over here traumatized. I'm going to be honest, Brother Asar. When you say he said 30 was old, then we must be ancient.
That's why it was so funny to me. I remember 30 years ago like it was yesterday.
Yes.
But see, that's important too because see, they don't understand how fast time go, the way we understand time.
Right.
I mean, because and every time I hear about they celebrating 250 years, I say, darn. I remember when we celebrated 200.
It's true.
That's 50 years
It's
ago.
true. Or the fact
That's
real.
how fast it go. So
Yeah.
if you look at, okay, it's 2026. You look at 1976. That was 50 years ago. Go 50 years before that. It
Right.
was 1926. We just coming out of slavery. Right? So what are we going to do in the next 50 years?
That is my point.
You see what I'm
And
saying?
now you're
So
talking, brother.
We got to get down
Brother
to work,
Ausar.
and we got to get serious.
You better
And we
leave
are
alone.
serious. In the African Union, the African community, they're getting serious.
That's right.
They get not only, they're getting real serious about the reparations, but I'm also sure that we're getting serious, and I hope we are,
Yes.
about pushing all the foreigners out of Africa so that all Africans can reap the benefits of Africa.
And while we're here, we should be focused on decolonizing ourselves. If we don't go anywhere with our physical body, our minds should be changing. We should be detoxing ourselves from imperialism and colonialism, and making sure that our value and our worth is respected, and nobody's dictating that. We are establishing our value, who we are, and not taking down into anything less.
Baba Kaban. Did I say his name
Baba
right?
Atmos?
No, Kaban.
Oh, yeah,
Baba.
Dr. Kamal.
Yeah,
Right.
Kamal. Yeah, he used to always say, de-whitenize yourself.
That's
Deep,
right.
oh, wow.
Yeah. Start with turning that TV off. Look,
Well,
That's
it's
right.
true.
Yeah, you say that all the
So
time.
you can
And
get your own perceptions.
That's soft power he was talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, the influence.
and speaking on Baba Kaman and Baba Atmos, I want to run real quick through a few intellectual giants that helped build you know this in the educational world, so to speak. Like Carter G. Woodson, he created the infrastructure for Black history, and warned that controlling a people's thinking shapes their behavior. Dr. John Henry Clark showed that community-based learning can produce university-level scholarship. Chi Anta-Diop used science to argue that ancient Egypt belonged within African history. Chancellor Williams asked how civilizations rise and fall, forcing hard self-examination. Dr. Ben, or yourself, Ben Jakanan, he brought Black people physically into contact with African history through travel and teaching. Mulana Karinga connected culture, ethics, and liberation. Molafi Asante made Afrocentric. I'm sorry.
Afrocentricity.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Afrocentricity, a former paradigm, while scholars like Van Sertima, Hilliard, and Wade Nobles expanded the field into questions of history, education, and psychology. And Ashwa Kwesi also did the alignment of religion and history. So, which matters more in a movement like this, credentials or the ability to build knowledge that serves the people?
The ability to build the knowledge that serve the people, but also, you can't discredit their credentials because,
Nah.
their credentials are incredible because everybody who you named were geniuses, and they are, and well, some of them still here today are geniuses. And I think it's important. It just shows the vast intelligence and genius and enlightenment, of the Black man and the Black woman, and it can't be underestimated. They in themselves show our possibilities and capabilities, right? In organizing and articulating their thoughts and their actions. And I'm sitting there, I was listening to as you was calling off the first ones, and I was like, wow, that's powerful.
Yes.
Just like when Dr. Sheikh Anta-Diop, you talked about scientific, when he basically did the melanin dosage test at the UNESCO conference in 1974. Basically, where him, and Dr. Theophilo Obenga, his colleague, they went up against the European scholars who were trying to say that the Egyptians were white. But what Dr. Sheikh Anta-Diop and Dr. Theophilo Obenga did was they went and cut swaths off of the mummies and ran a melanin dosage test, which proved that they was Black. They also did linguistic comparatives and things of that nature to support their case. So they was very thorough. So, it's a lot of, great African minds and thinkers, and I think that was one of the first ones you wrote was the ability to think. And like we teach the children at KCSSU in the 10 Virtues of Initiate, the first one is what? Control your thoughts. Right? And the second one is control your actions. So, all of our great scholars, and I know we got a lot more than that, but those who you named are just absolutely incredible and help to lay a foundation that for knowledge. And I really also like the part when you talked about Dr. John Henry Clark, where he was talking about in the community the level of consciousness that can be reached through teaching in the community. You don't have to be in a university setting.
That is correct.
We can do book clubs, study groups, online, at the park, anywhere, like we do at the park. We can teach inside, we can teach outside. There's so many different ways, basically, that we can get in the community to help educate our brothers and sisters for our liberation.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, I think learning has to be fluid. And for our people, if you think about how our makeup, first of all, we're very fluid people. That's why we are so well liked when it comes to our ability to dance and to, bounce back. Why? Because it is in us to be a very, well-rounded people. So when we learn, we have to make sure that we're teaching our people in a way that is conducive for our learning. And we don't learn just in a building, just going inside and punching a clock. That is not how we learn. We learn from a holistic perspective. So if you give it to us holistically, then it should benefit in every way instead of a perverted way where science is over here, but then math is over here. No, it's all inclusive. Science and math, history and language goes together. You have language that we speak when we don't say anything. There's a language amongst us that's spiritual amongst our people that you don't have to say anything. They talk about how brilliant the enslaved were in their ability to articulate when we're supposed to walk off the plantation or when we're going to take that Underground Railroad journey. That didn't take a lot of talking. That takes spiritual connections, and that wasn't learned in any man's institution. That was learned and accepted and brought together as a community. See, how do we get all this education K through 12? None of it benefits us in our own community. What they learned amongst themselves, even during the Underground Railroad, was enough to get them to the north. What are we learning amongst ourselves that can get us from point A to point B? Or we just, everything that we learn still doesn't unify us. Education is a healthy thing. So then why doesn't it unify us? Why when the education we get don't make us start businesses that can benefit our own communities? Is it education or are we just passing time, getting through white supremacist institutions to say that we got by? I'm going back to that song again. We did it. We graduated. And at the end of the graduation, we still got to walk past white supremacy. We still have to walk past the pirate Sir Walter Raleigh. What did we learn? If we still walk in there honoring our oppressor, they made us honor our oppressor and pay for it. So I would prefer, so reparations is not something that somebody gives us. There's a reparations where we decide that we won't allow you to abuse us anymore.
That's factuals. And these scholars that we're just naming because they're so great in helping push the black studies. But it's so many that they don't that I didn't call out or that you don't hear about as much. And we could run off a couple of them in a minute. But the ones that you do hear about a lot, do you hear about them because are their ideals being celebrated because it's been softened by institutions?
Well, it's good to remember, and honor, and I guess even celebrate to a degree. But we got too much work to be doing a whole lot of, celebrating. It's too much work that has to be done because every time we start making steps forward, they always want to take us back. And we talk about the crack epidemic. This was all after the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement. We talk about the crack epidemic. Then we talk about the gang explosion, which was right after that, which they now are calling what? The gang culture. Of course they want the gang culture amongst our young brothers and sisters. Those are our warriors.
That's right.
So if you can get our young warriors to focus on killing their own and targeting their own, they ain't got to worry about our warriors, challenging them.
That's right.
So they want our warriors to have the wrong knowledge, and that's why they push that gang culture. That's why they push that gang culture through the hip-hop industry, through the rap industry. Because as long as the gang culture is focused on gang activities, they're not going to be focused on the oppressor.
That's right.
That's the last thing they're trying to do is come face-to-face in contact with the law authorities or the oppressors, right? So they are basically engaged in things that are not only illegal, but are self-defeating.
That's right.
Right? And basically, pitting you against your own brothers and sisters. And unfortunately, we haven't figured it out yet how we can attract our young brothers and sisters the way these gangs have attracted them to do negative instead of to do positive.
Right.
We have to be able to attract our young brothers and sisters, our young warriors, right, that you're going to stand up for justice and for what's right. And you're not going to see your actions as crashing out, but you're going to see your actions as being calculated, right, with reason.
That's right.
In the decision making that you're making. You're thinking. And that's what we want our brothers and sisters and our people to do, is think. Because when you're crashing out, you're not thinking. You're just reacting, and you get bad results from that. So what we have to do as a people, right, instead of always criticizing and downing our brothers and sisters, understanding that they have the consciousness they have for a reason. What can we do to reach our young brothers and sisters when they're young and give them the right knowledge so that they'll know what to do with that knowledge? And they're not out there crashing out, but they become responsible young brothers and sisters in this fight for liberation, independence, and power.
Well, I think we better start teaching from the outside way before they get in the inside, because by the time we start at home, start in our community, stand outside on that porch. I hear the young man said, "This is when I came off the porch. Well, I'm about to jump off that porch right with you, and I'm gonna bring some food that they can really digest, something that they know is real." And I think that's what they're looking for. I just think we haven't done a creative job of putting it out there. Everybody's marketing, but nobody's marketing truth in the same capacity that everybody's marketing the lie. And after a while, the lie will become more, I think Malcolm X said, after a while, the lie, you can't determine which one, because the lie will become more popular than the truth. And so, and that's the other lie, brother, like you said, is that they've told us in order for you to teach, you have to go through their systems. You have to be qualified. You got to get a degree. You got to pay $1 million to a student loan, and then we just might let you come inside of our institutions. By the time that process has happened, we're talking about rotten eggs. Right? We're talking about rotten, nothing that we can digest that is beneficial for our communities. It's only to continue to support white supremacist agendas. And it don't liberate the individual black man nor the collective community.
Okay. Ask one more question before we get out of here. Are today's attacks on black studies really about the subject itself, or about preventing people from learning how to read power critically?
Ooh, that's good.
You want to answer it first?
Oh, no, you go ahead. That's
ask it again, please.
So, today's attacks on black studies, is it really about the subject, or is it about preventing people from learning how to read power critically?
Both. Really, the attack on black studies is the attack on the black man, woman, or child. It's an attack on history. It's an attack on our humanity.